It's so loud. Sometimes it's not on when I do this, so I go loud and then it works. So, thank you everybody for coming tonight. We're so happy to have you all here. We're going to get started in just a minute. I want to go over a few announcements, some upcoming events that we have. So, if you haven't heard, we're having Made to Connect. It's actually going to be here at Grace, and it is with Ryan and Kayla North. That's on August 31st. I can say that. So if you haven't registered, we have it on our website, and I'll also send some information out about it afterwards. But we do have scholarships available for that as well. So if you're interested in attending that and you'd like information about the scholarship, you can just respond to that email I send later. Ladies Night Out is coming up on September 6th. And then we also have NCI training, which is our nonviolent crisis intervention training. And that will be on September 30th. So all that information is going to be in the email I send to you this afternoon or evening, but I wanted to get that to you now. The next two gatherings. So on August 26th, we're going to be in Venice, and that is going to be on internet safety. And then on September 9th, we'll be at West Bradenton Baptist Church, and that will be on building resiliency and self-care. All right. So I'm going to introduce Dr. Shannon Roberts now, and she is going to continue with the presentation.
You probably can hear me. Yeah, okay. All right. So this was the week, huh? Well, we're not even through it yet. This has been a week. It's not done. Starting kids back in school, right? Oh my goodness. So, a little bit about me. I am a licensed mental health counselor. I've been in the area of practicing in a private practice for well over 30 years. I started when I was 12. Just kidding. Owned and operated a Christian counseling center in Tampa and continued to work for that after I sold it to my colleague. So it is my passion and my heartbeat, and I thoroughly enjoy the opportunity to come into speaking with you guys tonight. A little bit about me. I have three adult children. As of a week ago, I moved my last one off. He graduated from college at UF, and I went and settled him into an apartment to start law school. And I am officially an empty nester. All three of my adult children now have permanent residences outside of my home. So that doesn't necessarily mean that they're completely off my purse string, but hey, we're getting there, right? So there's hope for you guys and you parents. But I admire the work that you do, whether you're fostering. Who's fostering here? Okay, and who's kind of doing a second round adoption? Okay, okay. Oh my. Well, kudos to you, my heart, and my total respect for sure. I did do a small, and probably not nearly what you guys have been doing, a small stint of fostering. My youngest was 8 at the time, and we took in an 8-year-old boy. We thought that would really, really go well. And for a good few months it did. And then we hit Christmas, and my 8-year-old son was torn up that this 8-year-old boy was not going to be with his family for Christmas. And it didn't fare well. You know how that, blending in, it's really hard. And so we tried really, really hard to make sure he could get maybe home before the holidays, and we were able to find a relative placement and get him placed. And after that, my son said, "No more. I don't want any more." His heart just broke. So I know this is hard work. You guys are on the front line, and so I'm so glad to be able to come and talk to you today. But I'm a very interactive person, so I want you to talk to me. I want you to stop me and tell me, if you don't really maybe know what I'm saying or have questions about what I'm saying, because I like the interaction. So I think each one of you has a workbook tonight. So yeah, we're going to be talking about just resiliency in your marriage using the intimacy for life method. And so, what you guys know, what you probably already know to be true, and you don't need me to remind you, is that when you're on that front line, when you are not only just raising your own children, but adopting and raising and fostering other people's children as well, as caregivers, a lot of our own personal needs go on the wayside, right? And whether that's just your individual self care, but also more importantly, your marital relationship care and keeping. And so I'm so glad that you have an agency that believes in the undergirding of this relationship, because we know it's foundational. That the healthier that you guys are able to stay, the more resiliency that you're able to show up and provide foundational resiliency for the people you're pouring into. So tonight we're going to be talking about how do we do that. And so a lot of you men are going, yes, we're going, because we're talking about sex, right? um, yeah, we use the word intimacy in our day and age a lot of times as kind of the interchangeable word when we don't want to use the word sex. But there's so much more about intimacy. In fact, last fall, my book came out. It's called Naked and Exposed, Learning to Love Well in Your Marriage Using the Intimacy for Life Method. And I have a 27-year-old son, and he actually got married about 3 weeks ago. And he called me after the book came out, and he said, Mom, I need a few copies of that book. And I was like, great, awesome. Are you going to read it? He goes, I just need to give them out. A lot of my friends are getting married. I'm going to be giving them as wedding gifts. I was like, that's fantastic. You know, son, you're getting married too. Do you need a book? He goes, I'm not going to read your book. And I said, why not? He goes, because it's about sex. I'm not going to read a sex book from my mom. And I was like, granted. I said, but it's really not about sex. Just don't read the last chapter. So, so I admire you coming out. So I know you're probably thinking, intimacy, how are we going to be talking about this? And so what we have found in our research is that intimacy can go along all perspectives. There's emotional intimacy in your marriage. There's mental intimacy in your marriage. There's spiritual intimacy in your marriage. There's financial intimacy in your marriage. And, you know, lastly, obviously, the obvious, there's physical intimacy, very separate and different than even the sexual intimacy piece. So it goes along a very broad range. So, what is intimacy? Um, Intimacy is knowing and being known. In fact, intimacy is defined as into me I see, right? Meaning that there are levels of who we are that we make vulnerable risks and shares to be known. The internal drive, the internal thoughts, the internal emotions, the internal um, thoughts, all dreams, aspirations, spiritual connection points. And so the more that we are in a safe and secure relationship, the more risk of sharing, the more we are seeing into our partners. So what we find is this is God's design from Genesis 1. In the beginning, God created man in his image. For what reason? The same reason that you wanted to have your own children that have likeness in your image, for your pleasure. We take pleasure out of seeing our children, right? And he said, this is good. In fact, he said, no, this is very good, right? But then he said, this is not going to be enough. I designed my children to have a one partner that they have the ability to do life with. This is his design that we are hardwired for. We are neurobiologically hardwired for connection, especially with a romantic partner. So a lot of you, and I actually shared with another organization up in Tampa, similar to this. And what's so exciting is, most likely, the leaders here have shared with you, parenting and attachment science and attachment theory, right? Have we gotten a lot of that back? Yes, you're like, yes, to ad nauseam, right? But I love that you have that basis, because the attachment system, God's design for care and keeping and survival of the defenseless child, allows you to stay in an intimate connection with these children that you are trying to raise. And that same attachment that ensures emotional and physical survival, it protects the bond between primary caretaker and child and allows for care and keeping and comfort, right? Is the same attachment system that doesn't just go away when you are fully developed as an adult. This attachment system stays with us from cradle to grave. It is the system that then reveals that the same transfers from primary caretaker to romantic attachment partner, your spouse. It is the thing that leaves and cleaves. So, that neurobiological system that connects you to your children with that attachment bond is the same neurobiological system that then attaches with you in an intimate way with your spouse. And it still operates the same. It serves as the same function. It ensures the survival of the bond between spouses. It creates the co regulation of care and comfort. We still want to know that our partner is close. We still reach for our partner in time of need or desire of care or reaching for comfort. It keeps the love for the necessary emotional and physical needs being given and received. And when there's that secure attachment in your relationship between spouses, it creates that emotional calm that we try to provide in the same kind of care and comfort with our children. And we still have the same distress as well. That when we don't feel certain of our loved one, that we're not sure about their ability in that moment, or at times of not being as loving or as accepting or as available or as responsive, that creates the same level of distress that we see in our children during that separation anxiety that they have with their attachment bonded primary caregiver. And so we have that same distress signal that goes off in our bodies, and we do what's necessary to get that connection back. Same system. Do you kind of see it from that lens? Is it making sense from that perspective? Okay, good. So, the attachment system, when working correctly in couples, creates the safety and security. The same thing that you are trying to provide for your children is what we provide for the care and keeping of our partners. Safety and security allows for the culture of care in the marriage relationship to form and deepen intimacy. And so, what do we mean by security? Security means allowing each person to have a secure base to go out in the world, not alone, but with assurances. And when that happens, we can go out and become the best version of ourselves. I liken it to, how many of you guys, whether you want to admit it or not, it might be the next morning after a big argument, and we have the argument hangover, where I think we got it worked through, or maybe we have not got it worked through, and we're off to work to start the day. But we're just not hitting on all cylinders, right? It just doesn't feel quite right if I don't know for sure we're okay. We have a hard time focusing. It's hard for us to move through productivity. And so when we have quite the opposite, and I'm sure of you, then we have the ability to go out and become the best version of ourselves, creating the best focus and productivity because we're certain that someone is home that has our back and knows, right? That secure base that we give our children. They laugh and play on the playground, but every once in a while, they have to look back. For what reason? Make sure we're there. And if we make eye contact with them and we give them a sweet little smile of assurance, then they're off and playing and exploring their world again. But if they look back and we're not there, does the play resume? No, right? They go into distress mode. They can't focus on that enjoyment anymore. And they yell for you, run around looking for you, or stand there and cry until you come and make them feel secure again. Same system operates in our romantic relationships as well. We become the best version of ourselves when we feel safe and secure in a relationship with our spouses. So, so if we are hardwired for intimacy, then why is it so elusive? I mean, I've been working in the category of marriage therapy for 30 years. I work with everyone from pre engaged couples all the way to these high conflict couples that they're here in my office as a last ditch effort because they've already called the attorneys, right? I mean that's the whole gamut that I work with. And I just can tell you the difference between these two ends of the continuum. These pre-engaged couples or are pre-marriage couples. They usually come to my office in the same car, probably about 10 minutes ahead of time. And when I go pick them up in the lobby, they're sitting so close to each other, and they have these kind of deer in the headlight kind of looks on their faces. And I usher them in, to my office, and they're usually holding hands, and they're so excited that they get to go through this process. And they get to my couch, and yeah, the cliche couch, right? And all the cushions, they put on either side of the couch so that they can sit right in the middle together, and they're just touching all the way down the side because they are sitting so close together, right? And I'm thinking to myself, okay, my job is to convince them that at some point in time in their relationship, they're not going to think or feel this way, right? And now I'm at the other end of my continuum here, and I've got these high conflict couples, and they usually arrive at my office in two separate cars. And they usually stagger their arrival time so that they don't have to sit in that lobby together. And then when I go get them, they're usually either standing up or sitting down apart. One or both are on their phones. And they usually file in behind each other, looking straight ahead, not talking. And when they get to the couch, they move all those cushions and pillows to the center of the couch so they can create a little barrier in between, and they're sitting as far away as possible on that couch from one another. And you can cut the tension with a knife, right? And I'm thinking, okay, so my job is to remind them of that time when they actually thought the other one was the hoo ha, the best thing since sliced bread, right? So I just always marvel at, okay, if this was our starting point, how did we get here, right? What happens in marital relationships that, by the way, 52% today say, yeah, no, it's too hard. And by the way, 52% is even in a faith community as well. Why isn't that making a big difference? I'll be talking about that in a little while. Because listen, I love a good love story. And I ask and hear about love stories every single day. And usually these high conflict couples, once I get them into their love story, you begin to see a little bit of their bodies shift and a little softening on their face. And maybe they're starting to cut their eyes at each other and fill in the gaps of their story and complete each other's sentences. And pretty soon we've brought them back to a semblance of a place of their starting point, right? And, quite truthfully, I got a confession to make. I'm a little bit of a stalker, right? I love stories so much that even when I go out to restaurants, I tend to position myself maybe at the bar so that I have a good look see. And I can kind of look around the room and I can tell which ones are on first dates because the woman tries really hard and the men too, right? And they're usually not on any kind of screens or phones, and they're not sitting beside each other but across from each other. And you can kind of tell the conversation is just going a little stiffly, right? And then I can kind of tell those engaged or newly married couples because they really are still sitting beside each other and they're not on their phones either. And they usually order one plate and they divide it, right? And then I see those seasoned couples. What do you think I see in the seasoned couples? They're sitting across from each other. They're not talking. They're kind of scrolling through their phone. And you can barely see any kind of interaction or joy on their faces. But usually I will snuggle up to the bar too because I like to talk to other people. That's how I meet people. And if I happen to be by a couple, I always ask them their love story. And if they are happy and successful, I always say, well, what's the secret sauce? Tell me. I want to know. I work with couples, and this is the thing I ask them. But if they're in my office with this high conflict, they don't know the secret sauce, right? Not quite yet. But if they're like in this other side of the continuum and they're just starting, they still don't know the secret sauce. So tell me your secret sauce. But I also did my PhD in romantic attachment, so I also know kind of what the research says. And so putting together the intervention on how do you get them back here, right? So let's go. I'll tell you a little bit about that there are, just like everything in life, things are in a state of decline, erosion, if not maintained well. Like, you know it to be true. We buy that shiny new car, and it eventually doesn't get really shiny anymore. What? And we get that really great new couch and then the kids eat on it, right? So everything is always in this state of decline. We have to weed our gardens and our flower beds, right? That brand new, dress eventually is not as brand new anymore. It loses its little glimmer. So everything is in a state of decline and our relationship does too. But what we have found in the research and my experience is that there are attributes and rhythms of mature love that do maintain the safety and security of your attachment. It does ensure the development of mature love and it creates intimacy on all the levels that I spoke about. Let me say that again for your fill ins. There are attributes and rhythms of mature love that maintain the safety and security of the attachment, ensures the development of mature love, and creates the intimacy on all levels. And when I talk about mature love, that there are stages in every relationship that kind of form a triangle. All three sides propping each other up are necessary to get to that place of a mature love that has relationship stability, satisfaction, and longevity. The first one, obviously, is passion. Let's be honest. I mean, there are certain things that us researchers like to put our fingers on to kind of predict what attracts people together, this chemistry thing, right? And we have all these like matchmaking services that do all these kind of testing, and we have these reality show TVs, and I've never watched those ever, 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 ever. And when they think that the marriage relationships are pretty kind of science and predictable, we realize they're really not. We don't really know exactly what creates this chemistry and this passion that builds that first leg, but we know that there is something different with the way that we feel and we see our person, right? And so that's what's the first leg. It draws us together. Um, but what we know is that that can't be the only thing that sustains us, right? It's necessary initially and eventually long term, but we have to develop the other legs of the triangle for this relationship satisfaction, right? So the second leg is that we then build companionship. We learn to not just like or lust over our partner, but that we actually are wanting to build a friendship with our partner. That we shared values, shared interests, shared dreams, goals, maybe spiritual viewpoints, maybe hobbies, right? Maybe professional ambitions, but we have enough shared something that allows us to build time and interest together, right? And then lastly, that's all well and good, but that last leg is commitment, right? We have to know the person's all in. Because listen, those other two things will wane. There are times when that passion wanes, right? And there are times when that companionship, you say, I don't even like them, right? But that commitment thing is the glue that keeps it together until we can get one of those legs back up and running again, right? That safety and security. And those are the three legs that develop the mature love. Okay. So these rhythms can predict sustained relationship satisfaction and longevity throughout the lifetime of your marriage. So let's go. Here they are. The first one's emotional engagement. The biggest complaint that couples have when coming into counseling are blank challenges. Any guesses? Sex? Money? Parenting? In laws? No, the biggest complaint that couples have when they come into counseling is communication challenges, right? They say things like, we can't even get on the same page anymore. Or they'll say, man, it's like we're in different rooms because we'll have this discussion and she says this was said and I say this was said and we don't even remember the same thing, right? It's like, can you please tell her, Dr. Shannon, that, this is right and wrong? Can you referee this for us? Right? Well, can you tell him that he's from a second planet? I would have never said anything like that, right? And this is what happens. And I'm thinking, wow, this is so strange because, when they were in that passion and companionship, they had to talk. at some point in time, they had to get to a place where I love you. Will you be my wife? And yes, I can't imagine anyone knight in shining armor. I mean, what happened? To the communication, but they'll say things like that. And so, what we realize is there is a breakdown in three different levels of communication. And all three levels of communications are necessary to monitor emotional connection and engagement. Okay? So, the first one is just basic life management communication. Couples experience heightened life stressors. Anyone in here have a heightened life stressors? When not on the same page, that result in moving through life responsibilities in the urgent rather than the managed, and it handles and handling things in crisis mode and ensuring more probability of conflict between each other, right? So, what I have found with couples is that, let's be honest, you guys run a small business. Your family is a small business, right? Yeah. You have assets, you have employees, you unpaid, unpaid. You have budgets, you have projects, you have open business, closed business, right? You have maybe a CFO, maybe you have a CEO, maybe you have a COO, right? These are all small businesses. But yet, couples never have business meetings. They never really sit down and get all of those logistics agreed on, right? Calendaring, finances, bill pay, who's calling the plumber, who's picking up the kids, right? When are we going on vacation again? Weren't you supposed to call? Weren't you supposed to book, right? So it's always in that urgent, pants on fire kind of moment. I thought you got the calendar invite to go get the girl, right? Calendar invite? I didn't get any kind of calendar invite. This is how my couples talk, and you guys are laughing. How do you guys do your calendaring? I can't make this stuff up, right? Set your notifications, sir. And so the communication begins to break down, the stress goes up. Now we're covering the base in urgency, and conflict has a higher degree under those circumstances to happen, right? Over time. Things don't get done. I thought you were calling the plumber. No, I wasn't calling the plumber. Plumber's your job. Remember, I do everything outside the house. You do everything inside the house. Where did we come up with that role division, right? I didn't know that. I didn't know that was my responsibility. I thought I had the kids and you had the house, right? Right. Exactly. So, life management communication has to be managed as a prevention, not a remediation. So, if you're not having regular business meetings, I recommend that you absolutely have regular business meetings, whether that's weekly or every other week. And listen, it doesn't have to be long, it just means we have to have the conversations. We never talked about that parenting thing that happened that, I disagreed with how you handle that and how you didn't handle that, right? We didn't ever talk about whether or not we're going to go with that soccer team and did you make that phone call? Or we never talked about how we're going to budget for those new tires and are we going to take it out of the grocery money or how are we going to be doing that? Oh, by the way, did you pay that bill because I got my second notice in the mail, right? And this is what happens if we don't have those regular scheduled times where we're doing check-ins with finances and parenting and calendars and home projects and open business. Did you make that call? Yeah, I called the plumber. Great. What's the next step, right? Okay. Okay. So a lot of my couples say that Sunday nights are really good nights to do this. As we're transitioning out of the weekend, we're kind of starting to look at the week, and now we have to make sure we're on the same page as to what the activities are for that week, what kinds of but passing two shifts in the night. Do you have that practice? Do you have that class? Do you have pick up, drop off, those kinds of things? It's just a natural thing, except for you're doing it intentionally rather than in passing or on the fly or upset that it didn't get accomplished or talked through. Okay. So those are life management skill communications. And I will be honest with you, when we have high conflict couples, sometimes this is the only things that they actually are left talking about is transactional information. It's the thing we text, it's the thing we might email, or it's just the only time that we actually speak words to one another, right? That it doesn't go beyond just those transactions, information, data gathering. And so we don't go into these other two parts of communication. The next one is conflict management conversations and communication. So, all couples have disagreements, even arguments. I can admit to that. Do anyone want to say, oh, not us? Okay. And so, listen, what we know to be true is not that couples fight, it's how they fight that's the most important. In fact, disagreements and open discussions of disagreements and having the ability to say, ouch, I don't like that, is equally as much as an intimacy builder as telling you, thank you very much, I love the roses that you brought me, right? So there has to be room and space in relationships where we can discuss differences because we're different. We're different genders, we're different personalities, we're different life experiences, we're wired differently. Of course, we're not always going to see things from the same perspective. And so there has to be a conflict difference perspective management system. There has to be an appropriate way to fight. And so we work with our couples in learning how it isn't that they fight, but how they fight that's problematic. So in our fight systems, in unhealthy fight systems, our unhealthy fight systems tend to activate the back brain into self protection. If we feel like what is being heard, how it's being spoken, what the circumstance that is being spoken about seems threatening, it activates our fight, flight, or freeze, right? And when the fight, self protection system of fight, flight, or freeze, it results in behaviors of either escalation, moving away from your partner, or shutting down from your partner. So if you're a fighter, you're a ramper upper. If you're a flighter, you're a mover or awayer. And if you're a freezer, you're a shutter downer. I bet you're just already wanting to elbow your partner. I know what you are, right? I'm a ramper upper, I'll admit it. I want to resolve right then. I get loud sometimes, and I want to make sure I'm heard, seen, and understood. Any ramper uppers in the room? Okay. I know I don't like to be ramper upper either. Oh, I wish I wasn't. What about mover awayers? Whew, you just need to deal with that on your own. I'll come back when you are calmed down, right? Who's a mover awayer? Okay. And then there's those shutter downers. Hey, hon, did you not hear me? Huh? Let me say it again. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. They are not available, right? And sometimes it gets even a little more contemptuous, right? Purposely stonewalling and being silent as a punishment. Not that any of you guys do that in here, I promise. But do we have any freezers in here? They're just not going to share or open up when they're in that state, right? Okay. Gotcha. A lot of time. Okay. Thank you for your honesty. So, what happens in these fight cycles? Let's take a ramper upper and a shutter downer, okay? What? Wait, is that you guys? Okay. All right. So the ramper upper comes in and says, "Hey, there's something that we need to talk about tonight." Right? It's the fact that you're always on that phone. I've told you over and over and over that when you're home, I need you available to talk to. That you should just get that done and be present, be available, be with the family, right? I know. Been doing this for 30 years. And so, sucker punch, fight, flight, or free activated. So, did you not hear me? I thought you said we're going to have that conversation tonight and then we're going to like pop popcorn and watch that movie. You always do this. You never follow through with what you say you're going to do, right? So the more he shuts down, the more she ramps up. The more she ramps up, the more he shuts down. And now we're doing this little disconnect dance, right? So, what we know about this brain mechanism, you're not crazy because your brain makes you do it. You just tell your spouse that next time. I, my brain made me do it. Dr. Shan said I could. I mean, that's my amygdala. And Amy's all out of whack and blah, 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 right? There's a reason. But what we're finding out in our research that if we continue to do fight cycles like that, entrenched in that chronic, rigid, unyielding dance, because let's be honest, you could probably put any circumstance that triggers this, and the dance pretty much looks the same, no matter what we're arguing about, right? So it becomes a little bit more chronic the longer we go. What we find is that that cycle prevents work throughs of problems. We can't get to that rational brain, which is where we house problem solving and conflict management, negotiation, compromise, right? And we don't have the ability to have a system that works through healing conversation of hurts and offenses in the relationship. So they go unaddressed and unresolved, right? And over time, what we know is that rigid chronic fight cycle shifts our want tos of how we show up for our partner. And when we don't want to, that negatively impacts and influences how our partner wants to show up in the relationship too. And it slowly erodes this intimate connection over time. And what we know about that fight cycle, this is how important it is. Any of you familiar with John Gottman's research? Yeah, good. Yeah. John Gottman is kind of like the godfather of marriage therapy. You know, he did these longitudinal studies and he watched how couples interacted and fought. And he's been able to narrow it down to four things. That if these four things are present in how couples fight, it's the biggest predictor of divorce. 99% accuracy. He'll watch a couple fight at the beginning of his study and he'll say they're if unaddressed, that couple at the end of our study will be divorced. You want to know what they are? Nobody wants to know? If there's criticism, what do I mean? Meaning if we are attacking the person and not the problem. Those couples that can align together as a team and attack the problem together fare better. Number two, defensiveness, meaning it's really hard for me to receive your influence. We make it bounce right back, right? Any kind of information or feedback or complaint coming my way, I can't receive this, and so I turn it around and push it right back, right? Nobody does that, right? It can look like minimizing, explaining, dismissing, rationalizing, right? Explaining. Number three is this stonewalling thing that I talked about. This refusal to have hard conversations. And sometimes it's punitive, the silent treatment, right? And then lastly, contempt. When our want tos shift to be able to show up for so long, eventually it works its way into contempt, a general disregard and caring. The exact opposite of how you felt at the altar. And Dr. Gottman actually says that that's the hardest one to come back from. Okay. So, this negative fight cycle is the biggest predictor of divorce and can ultimately stop all other intimacy activities that we'll be talking about. When our want to shift, we don't show up for the other good stuff. Yeah. The last level of emotional management and connection through communication is vulnerable sharing. And those couples that can put their just transactional kind of business meeting data and details into a category, they actually are able to navigate conflict in a healthy way that brings them to a place of reconnection or problem solving or healing. Are also the ones that can go deeper in their sharing beyond just this transactional data stuff. They actually enjoy connecting through communication and emotional safety and sharing. They can share thoughts, feelings, aspirations, fears, dreams, right? Desires, insecurities. All the internal stuff that sometimes we don't feel like we can take the risk because we might fear rejection or ridicule or it just doesn't matter, right? So those couples that have the safety and security through the way they manage conflict and the way they take care of household business have the free capacity to actually take emotional risks and really share at a deeper level and connect more intimately through emotional engagement. Okay. So vulnerability involves risk of exposure, disclosing parts of ourselves others do not know, of our inner thoughts, emotions, fears, hopes, and longings, to name a few. Thoughts, emotions, fears, hopes, and longings. So that's all emotional engagement. The second rhythm that we find with partners is shared recreational and leisure partnership. I have found that when you were all dating or early married, you had a lot of time and discretionary opportunity, maybe better resources, to actually go and do things. You most likely started not living in the same place. So you had to actually plan the opportunity of when you're going to see each other. And it usually involved, what do you want to do? Where do you want to go? What do you, right? And so as we become very lackadaisical and very lazy in our relationship, a lot of times, um, now we're just together 24/7. I know that I'm going to see your face in the morning, I'm going to see your face in the evening, and we take it kind of for granted that we actually like to go and do things together. And so what we also find in couples is that as we are growing in the career ladder, or we're growing in our asset acquisition, that takes more time to maintain. And then we're growing our family, and we're growing our presence in the community with extracurriculars and involvements. That usually that time that we used to have begins to dwindle as to the opportunity and maybe even the intentionality of making that time together. So what happens is we become just co-parents and co-household managers, and we never actually go and actually do the fun stuff anymore. In fact, sometimes it's hard to even find a 30-minute block where we can actually even have a conversation, much less go out. But those couples that can find a nugget of time that's intentional about planning some enjoyment, where we already did our calendaring, we don't have to talk about the conflict. Now we're freed up just to experience each other with warmth and fun and to laugh again, right? We might not enjoy the same things that we did while we were dating. Maybe we're not going to be those marathon trainers anymore together. But we transition through the new chapters of our lives so that we are still finding enjoyment in each other's company, where we can let our guards down, let our hair down. It's not a time to talk about the children. It's not a time to talk about the calendar. It's a time where we just get to talk about enjoyment. Sometimes it's what research tells us is that planning these activities or planning these vacations are equally as much of an endorphin release, equally as much of enjoy ability as we're talking and planning as actually doing them. So if you could only make one night a week, I mean, one night a month, at least carve in time and intentionality where we're talking about the planning of that one week, right? So 30 minutes, maybe an hour once a week, where we know after all the ankle biters are in bed, and instead of going right to the Netflix, right, or back on the laptop, that this is no screen night. We are not going to, do anything other than what we've decided is our enjoyable experience. Maybe that's planning your vacation together. Maybe that's you really like to do those old board game things because, there was a resurgence of those during the pandemic, right? Card games. Maybe it's that you enjoy cooking together, but finding that thing that brings you a renewal of the relationship, where you walk away from that night feeling more connected, de stressed, and looking forward to the next opportunity. Shared recreation and leisure. What are some things that you guys enjoy doing? Oh, board games. Which one's your favorite? Tan? Oh, Catan. I haven't heard of that one. Yeah, I'm going to write it down. Who's the winner? No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to talk about it. Definitely. Okay. How about some more? Do what? Oh, you know what? Because it's a bad thing. No, it's not. You're really right. Sorry. Thank you for that. But what I have found is, he'll go to one room and watch his Netflix thing, and she'll go to another room and watch her Netflix thing. But if you want to say, this is the thing we enjoy together, we're going to pick out this show, but you got to honor not going ahead. It's like, wait, why aren't you laughing right here? Oh, yeah, that was funny. You've seen this. No, I'm quite okay with that. If you are, I mean, if you enjoy, yeah. Anyone else? What else do you guys enjoy? You do? I've only played it once. I know. So you actually get to a pickleball location. Did you not hear? Did you not hear? Okay. Okay. Maybe you could put a little small. Maybe you could put a little small net in the backyard or something. No, I do hear some really great things about pickleball, and that you can either play with yourselves or you could show up and rotate in and meet other couples. That's a really great community building as well. So, okay. Any more? One more before we move on. You both enjoy that? Wow. Please tell me that you like the same team. Oh, thank God. Okay. Baseball. Why did you guys get into baseball? Okay. Are your kids also involved in baseball? Not yet. Awesome. Oh, no kidding. I love that. That's really great. They really do like. Yeah. Okay. That's awesome. Okay. Carved in time to play together allows for fun, laughter, and warmth. The anticipation, planning, and research is equally as rewarding as participation in the activity, and it combats the stresses of life. Next is shared purpose and meaning activities. The couples that find that, hey, we are more than just the sum of two people. Together, we are able to achieve something greater with a purpose than what we could have done apart. There was a reason behind us finding one another. That's easy in the room, right? Because you guys are already with some kind of calling and purpose with how you're serving the least of these, right? But this is one of the areas that bring greatest amount of connection and intimacy and longevity of satisfaction when we can together find a mission or a purpose. These can be deeply spiritual of doing together something that's greater than ourselves. These are the outward branding of the us, representing inward shared beliefs and passions. Sometimes they're just practicing spiritual disciplines together. Whether you show up at church and enjoy worshiping next to each other, where you find a category of service that you're giving back, whether you enjoy, discussing the sermon from the Sunday morning, are you praying together, or you find a cause that you can jointly feel passionate about giving either in your time or your resources, which you're already doing. See, you're already winning. All right. Anyone want to share in this category of how beyond even the fostering or the adopting, ministering or pouring back into these little ankle biters of ours. Well, how else do you find shared purpose and meaning? Any ideas? Common faith? Who said that? Okay. What do you like to do with your common faith practices, Jody? Attending church together. Yeah. There's something deeply connecting about that experience, right? Okay, good. Oh, nice. So you enjoy hospitality and making people feel more comfortable and bringing them inside your home. I love that. I love that. Okay. Anything else? Anybody? Okay. Let's move on. Physical affection practices. And listen, that's a continuum because couples that are able to have non sexual physical affection rhythms all the way through the whole gamut and continuum of the sexual intimacy practices. I'm not going to go really deep into this because, listen, I'm not going to diminish that just by a few sentences or so the sexual intimacy piece because sometimes couples really struggle in this category. Whether it's a physiological issue, whether it's health issues, or whether there's emotional issues from trauma, or whether it's this chronic rigid cycle in the relationship that shifts the want tos. What we find in couples that are not having any of these renewal systems that this is the first to go. And so we don't have physical affection rhythms that are non-sexual, and we definitely are not going to make ourselves vulnerable to the sexual intimacy connection as well. And what we have found is that when that's present, the woman most likely will say, I need to feel emotionally connected and safe before I can get to that place of physical risk taking sexually. And usually, what I hear from the man is that when I'm not feeling connected to my wife, I want to reach for her to feel physically connected in a sexual way. So the woman is fighting for emotional connection and the man is fighting for physical connection. And so now we're in a sexual cycle that becomes pretty rigid. Pursue and back off, pursue and back off, pursue and back off. And so, what we find in our research is that we have to go and do these other levels first, and then finally get to that place where we restore the physical and sexual intimacy piece as well. But the natural rhythms of this renewal system, when we can feel the safety and security, when we can make ourselves vulnerable in a physical kind of way, and have a mutual pleasure, these are couples that have longer relationship satisfaction and a little bit more higher return of longevity in the relationship. The power of touch. Physical intimacy involves a long continuum and ultimately healthy sexual intimacy, meaning I hope that there's rhythms in your relationship where you have some kind of physical touch. Whether that's before you exit from each other during the day, you find each other with a sweet hello, goodbye, kiss, hug, right? Whether it's the first thing you do when you walk back in after a hard day, long day, and you haven't seen each other all day. I hope you find each other for a kiss or a hug. How are you? Glad you're home. And the power of a smile as your respite place of home. I hope that, if you decide to be with one another on that couch, that it's sitting right next to the other, at least touching feet or hands, right? I hope that even i- if you are in bed together and it's not one of those nights that you're not necessarily connecting, that at least your little toes travel under the sheets and tuck in under the leg, right? The power of touch and connection is the same thing that you do for your children when you tuck them in at night. You rub their backs, you bring them in close, you nuzzle their little necks, you ruffle their hair, right? Is the same culture of care that we learn how to do in really healthy rhythms with our partners as well. Reaching for one another for care, comfort, and connection are the basic building blocks to eventually lead to romantic and passionate sexual intimacy. If you're struggling in that area, obviously, I will make myself available. I offer a 30-minute consultation for anyone that wants to talk privately and confidentially about anything in these categories that you might want to be talking in not a group setting about. That being said, we are nearing the end. I wanted to leave you with a couple of things. Um, One of the things I don't like about public speaking is that I am giving you what to do. I'm giving you information. But what we know to be true is that ultimate shifts and changes don't happen with just knowledge. I can't give you a prescription and say, go do it and it get done. It just doesn't work that way, right? I worked with couples at the very beginning of my experience when I was 12. And we had these cognitive approaches to marriage counseling, and we would teach these communication kind of tools and skills. Well, fair fighting, speaker listener, you have this little like mic, and you're not allowed to talk unless you have the mic, and then you have to take turns, and you get the timer on, and all of those things. And it's kind of a little condescending and insulting because you guys are intelligent enough to know that you shouldn't be like, you learned how to share in kindergarten, right? I mean, right? But so that just doesn't happen for a reason. Either your want to a shift or this fight, flight, or thing has happened. It's getting in the way of you, you know, acting normal. And so I wish I could just say, go do this and you'd be successful. And you could if you could make yourself do it, right? It is a good prescription. But I also know that it's about being more than knowing. Go be it. Go show it. Show up well and love well. Put the oxygen mask on your marriage so foundationally it spills over into those children. Be safe. Be secure. Love well. So let's do a little exercise. Bear with me. If you don't have a little kind of partner here, then you get to not do it. But so turn to your partner. Just bear with me. I want you to experience something rather than just walk away with knowing something. Go ahead and get to the place where you're comfortable. We're going to be here a couple of minutes. I'm not going to stare at you, and nobody else is staring at you. Take each other's hands and get positioned so that you can establish eye contact without breaking it. Like, oh, wow, this is what you look like? Haven't done this in a while. I'm usually next to you in the car or yelling at you from the other room or, right? I just want you to pay attention of how this feels. It might feel a little awkward, actually. That's what I hear from couples. That when we haven't taken the time to do this in quite some time. Now, I just want you to just notice if you take a couple of deep breaths, if you purposely try to relax your body by dropping your shoulders from your ears and softening your face and taking a couple of deep breaths, you might find that the touch and the smile actually are very relaxing to you. Take a moment. Nervous laughter, humor. Yes, I know. I know. So let's just take a moment. Maybe a gentle squeeze of your hand saying, hey, you're my person. Maybe a sweet smile saying, I gotcha. They're having a really hard time over here, right? All right, let's let a positive thought just bubble up about our partner. Maybe taking notice of an attribute you haven't really focused on in a long time. And just let that positive thing bubble up. Let's go ahead and speak that affirmation to our partner. You are. Hope you took turns. Another sweet smile. Let's drop our eyesight down to each other's hands. Pay attention to how their skin feels against yours. Maybe the warmth, maybe the strength, maybe the softness. Maybe using your thumb or your forefinger to caress theirs. And let's think about what those hands do for you. And maybe even let's just go ahead and share a word of thanks of what those hands provide for you. Thank you for. As we bring our eyesight back to one another, soft place to fall and a secure place to go out, right? So let's do a little bit of a vulnerable share. What is one thing that you want to share that's a win for you today? What's a victory? What are you celebrating? Share it with your partner. Okay. Let's go ahead and move to the other side of that. What's an area of challenge that seems to be in your life right now? Take turns. And as we share that, the partner just holds space to listen, maybe a sweet smile of compassion. I'm with you. Maybe a gentle squeeze. You're not alone. And as we're finishing up, before we turn back away, notice, did this get more comfortable after only a few minutes? Yeah. And look, they don't want to stop. Okay. Don't tell me you don't have time to connect. That was 5 minutes, ladies and gentlemen. 5 minutes is all that was. We can find 5 minutes, right? Okay. Thank you guys very much. It was a pleasure to be with you tonight. And if you have any questions and answers, this is your time. If you want to ask anything, feel free. If not, I'm also going to be back at the table as well. Any questions? I wanted to make sure that we got you out of here and the child care workers done, right? Okay, guys. Thank you so very much.
Hello. Okay, it's on again. All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Shannon. Make sure you guys stop by her table, check out that book, and then check your email for the program survey that was sent out a little bit ago. So if you could fill that out prior to leaving, that would be amazing. And then if you requested a certificate, they're on the back table right where you came in. And make sure you pick up your kiddos by 8 p.m. And if you haven't already, stop at the table. We got the bedding, we have sweaters. Make sure you take it all home, guys. All right. Hope you guys have a great night. Thank you.